Chairman, thank you. Thank you all for your service to our nation. General Hokanson, let me follow up again with Senator Collins. Questions of you. I would add some additional thoughts on the KC-46A basing. A recent RAND study shows that the reserve component pilots are more experienced and cost-effective than their active duty counterparts. The study recommends that the Air Force reevaluate its bed-down plans for the KC-46A to maintain an efficient balance between active and reserve components. In your best military advice, does the Air Force current KC-46A basing plan adequately equip the Air Guard fleet to maximize the benefits highlighted in the RAND assessment?
Senator Moran, thank you for the question. And sir, when we look at concurrent proportional, I don't think it does. We're currently 37% of the aerial refueling fleet, but the KC-46 plan has us going to about 16 to 17%. And when you look at the fact we operate our KC-135s at 34% less cost than the active component, I would argue by putting more in the active duty, you're incurring greater cost, whereas the same readiness levels are met within our Air Guard units, and the amount of aerial refueling that we do is very significant. So I would argue that more fielding within the reserve component reduces the cost, yet retains the same capability that our nation needs.
On a similar subject, Congress appropriated $350 million to procure one company of Gray Eagles in the National Guard Division. This is a fine start, but all Guard divisions should mirror the active component's operational capabilities. I particularly think this is true. I mean, the war in Ukraine has highlighted for me the value, the necessity, in fact, of UAVs, and it seems to me a terrible mistake that our Guard and Reserve would not have the capabilities that are necessary. In your best military advice, do you agree, not with my assessment, but with the assessment of the need for more active component parity?
Senator, I would argue one of the greatest missions of the military is to prevent war by deterring others to do things that they might want to do. And by ensuring that our reserve and Guard units are manned, trained, and equipped just like their active duty component, then I think it increases the greater deterrent value. If you look at the fact we have 8 divisions within the National Guard, ensuring that they have the same capability and capacity, so when called forward, if that need arises, they bring the same capabilities to the battlefield, and that our adversaries understand that it doesn't matter if it's Guard, Reserve, they bring the same capability. And the Gray Eagles, as you mentioned, the drone capability, the reduction of putting manpower forward, but the capability is something we need absolutely in every one of our 8 divisions.
Thank you. General Healy, your opening statement highlighted the risks associated with legacy aircraft, divestment without recapitalization, and delayed modernization. What strategies must be employed to mitigate the potential impacts on air superiority and surge capacity?
I appreciate the question, Senator Moran. And in follow-up to the previous question regarding KC-46 bed down, I'd point out as well that we currently have one KC-46 unit at Seymour Johnson 1 that's potentially on the books out of March Air Reserve Base, but our 6 remaining KC-135 units have no program of record, so we're not being concurrently fielded with KC-46 units. The constant advocacy on my behalf, I think, is the best answer right now, whether that's to the Department of the Air Force leadership or within this body and the House Appropriations Committee as well. With regard to proportional and concurrent, 2 issues come about from that. Our ability to act in a 5th-gen fight is severely limited if we've got 4th-gen equipment. Referencing the RAND study that General Hokanson brought up, we have a more experienced force than the active component, and that's just by virtue of people want to continue to do the mission well beyond their 10-year active duty service commitment. That being said, if they don't have the opportunity or the venue to go to something that they can continue to provide service in, F-35 or a KC-46, then we potentially are losing some of the outstanding experience that is on the table with regards to fighting our next conflict if called upon.
General Healy, I would point out your answer to me. One of the things I think is important is all branches of the service, to different degrees, experience recruitment and retention challenges. And we ought to be utilizing, you just mentioned the capability of retaining personnel in this capacity, and we ought to be taking advantage of that circumstance that doesn't exist in all circumstances. True?
Absolutely, sir. We call it closing all the windows. We got to stop letting these people get out. So we do a fantastic job of retention in the Air Force Reserve. We're currently at about 88.3%. 89% was our goal for this year, but we're consistently at an 88.2% retention on a 10-year average for our pilot force, which is the most exquisite and costly force that we have.
Speaking of closing all the windows, you should close all the windows on 3 of the folks who are sitting at the table this morning. I will miss their presence. And finally, I would say, just as a comment, I am working with the Kansas National Guard in regard to expanding their state partnership, and I would like your help, General Hoganson and others, to accomplish my goal. Thank you.
Senator